Hello everyone, and welcome to the CIT260 final presentation by Edward Wilson. This is our lesson 14 individual assignment. Before I get started, I want to throw out a special thanks to Mason Roller and Andrew Westensee, without whom I definitely could not have completed anything in here that you see that is good. I appreciate their tutoring and help as I've been learning Java. Anything in here that is correct, I want to throw them some kudos. And if it's completely wrong, it's probably entirely on me. So special thanks to them. For our rubric, the first thing we have to do is explain the difference between static class variables and class non-static or instance variables and give examples of code on those. A static variable is something that has the same value all the way across all the instances of that class, whereas non-static or instance variables can have different values within the class. If we were to look at one of our model classes here, we've got game.java. We can see the different instance variables that are located here. Each of these is going to be different. So for example, there may be a different days traveled or a different status for each instance of the game class when that's saved. I also like taking a look at the player class as an example. Here we can see an array of party member names. If these were static, then they would be the same across all instances of the player class. We would always have the same name, but since we don't, we can actually have different names for everybody. A really great example of this that we came up with was talking about cars. If we have a car class, we might have car color, number of doors, number of wheels, different types or elements. Steering wheel, they would all have a steering wheel, but it might be a different type of steering wheel or a different type of seating cover, and so on. But if I had a subclass of cars called sedans, I could make a static variable that would say 4 doors. And so all of the sedans that were in that subclass would all have 4 doors regardless. They might still have different paint colors because paint color would remain an instance variable, but we'd have a static variable that said you all have 4 doors. Outside of the enum arrays that we're doing, all our stuff here is going to be instance variables for the most part within the program that we have, and we're going to talk about how to call those later. Particularly, we'll see, keep an eye out for this inventory array right here that we're going to look at. Speaking of arrays, the second element that we want to talk about here is arrays, array lists, and enum classes. So an enum class is when we have a fixed length list of unvarying elements. And so our item type can be a good example of that. We're always going to have 7 inventory items. They will be oxen, wheels, axles, tongues, clothes, ammunition, food. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everything is going to fit within that. It is fixed length and it is fixed items. An array is going to be a fixed length, but the item elements themselves might vary. And if I understand correctly, that's what we've got here with our party members. We've got 5 party members. We're always going to have 5 party members, just 5 party members, but their names may vary. I may use Mark, Judy, Henry, James, and Agatha, and someone else playing the game may use something else. Their instance of that player is going to have different names for the party, even though they've got 5 and I've got 5, so that's an array. An array list is even more permissive because an array list will have indefinite number of items and an indefinite number of or indifferent names for the elements that are part of that. And here on line 23 we can see our saved games. We may have an indefinite number of saved games. They may be named something different each time, and so that's an example of where we might want to use an array list. One of the next things we want to do is talk about our for statements and writing loops. So my favorite particular instance of that I did is right here in lines 57 and 58 of inventory control.java. This is the part of the game, and I'm going to use this example in a few other classes that we have here to explain several of the elements that are here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to read through the list of current inventory items. And rather than have everything typed out and try and bring in each item variable at the same time, we can go through and use a for loop. We know there's going to be the 7 items in there, and for each inventory item I, which is right here, we're going to go ahead and get the name, put in a couple of tabs, the quantity, put in a couple more tabs, and the base price. The goal of this was to output to a file path a list of all of our inventory underneath the headings name, quantity, and base price. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take the first element of the array, oxen, for example, and it's going to pull the name oxen, the quantity of oxen that we have, which is initially 0, and the base price of oxen, which is 20. And it's going to do that. Then it's going to go over to the next element in the array, the second, which in this case is going to be wheels. And it's going to give us the name wheels and the quantity of wheels and the base price for wheels as we go through there. And it iterates through each element of the array until we get to the end, and then it terminates. We don't have to terminate out of this because, again, we're going to have that fixed list of 7. It gets to the end, it knows where to go, and we're good to go. The inventory array that you see that's coming in here, right here, is from up here. So the print current inventory method takes the inputs inventory array of inventory, and that's set actually in game.java. If we scroll down here, we can see in lines 53 and 57 where we're setting the inventory array here. And that's coming out as a specific set of items. And here we're populating the inventory array with our get create items. So inventory array of inventory items is new inventory of these 7 items. That's going to all come into here. Eventually it ends up back here, and we're able to iterate through those 7 items to get everything that we need moving across it. One of the things they wanted us to do as we're going through there is understand how to throw, propagate, and catch custom runtime errors in our program. And if we look at our print current inventory view, which is the part of the program that's going to help us output the inventory array into a file, line by line, item by item, that little I, each line, name, quantity, and base price. If there's a problem when we do that, we want to throw an error. So here we can see where we're taking the inputs file path from the keyboard. We ask them to enter that. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. And now we can see us calling this inventory. So this is going to be our variable that we're going to be calling get inventory. We're going to want to print current inventory file path. And if I highlight print current inventory, I can see where that is coming from over in inventory control. Here's print current inventory. It's going to take those elements incoming. And if there's a problem right here, it's going to throw an inventory control exception. If, for example, there's a problem with the file path here, we can throw an inventory control exception for that that says, you put in an invalid path, please try again. So that's coming up here. There's an error right here in print current inventory view. If there is an error, we're going to try this little method right here. We're going to try to go get this and make it all return successfully. And if it doesn't return successfully because it's going over to inventory control print current inventory, that's where it's going to go. And when it runs the code over in inventory control.print current inventory, if there's a problem, it's going to throw the exception, which then we are going to catch right here. And we're going to label that E, and we're going to give an error view to the display that will say there's an error, and it's e.getMessage, which in this case was our you put in an invalid path, please try again. So there we can see how we have a custom error and how it is happening when we try our method, which is inventory control dot print current inventory. We see that exception happen up here in lines 49 and 50, which then throws the error back over here to print inventory where it's caught and displayed to our end user. Though one of the additional things that we wanted to do is explain when and why a character string class should be used versus a byte string class to read and write data. A byte string class, as I understand at this point in time, is computer code. We're reading the computer code, whereas a character string class is the human readable language. So for example, if we have somebody who is sitting in this case and they're entering the file path, we're going to have that coming in as to the computer as a byte string. It's got to be able to read that code. But when we output our file, we want to output that as a character string that's going to be human readable. So that would be an example of how we would do that here. I also understand a character string can go faster rather than byte by byte, but of course it just depends on the usage when we're going to want to use that. And for the kind of final two parts here, we want to walk through an example of code that I've written for an individual assignment and demonstrate how to write character data to an external file, and in the process demonstrate the portion of a fully realized and fully implemented game that we have. So I'm excited to show you this. This is probably the coolest thing I did this semester. Again, special thanks to everybody who helped work with me to show me how to get a lot of the elements in this. Here we have our game. I'm playing it down in the lower corner. There's our player Mark. I'm going to go ahead and start a new game. I'm going to be a banker for this game because, you know, being rich is good. And I'm going to input the names of my party members. I think earlier we were using Mark, Judy, Henry, James, and Agatha. And if that's wrong, it's okay. I forget my kids' names all the time anyway. And I'm going to go to winning view in 8. Now we haven't won the game. We haven't finished the game. We'll be missing some information here. But the thing that I'm looking for here is P. I want to print the current inventory. This is the example that we've been using throughout. We're going to go ahead and print the current inventory, and it's going to ask us for a name. And so I'm going to demonstrate here what happens if I give it something it doesn't like. So I just entered in a path that it doesn't like, and there you can see my custom exception that it threw because I entered an invalid path. So what I'm going to do now is output that to a presentation final.text here for us, and that's going to be within a temp folder, and then it goes back to here. So let's go see what happened. If I open this up and I go into local disk C and I go into temp, there is presentation final, and we can see how it output each iteration of those 7 items. It gave us the name, the quantity, which since we just started the game is 0, and the base price of each item all the way through. So that's probably the coolest thing that I did this semester, or it's on the list of the coolest things, was getting a loop that would run through what the current inventory was, save it to a file, be able to open the file, and see the results. The game did something, and so that was fantastic. Anyway, thanks for listening to the presentation. Again, special thanks and kudos to my professor and classmates for all the help they gave me along the way. I definitely know more about Java and how information flows back and forth between the classes, the model classes, view and control classes that we worked with this year. And this has been a great semester with a lot of aha moments. So again, special thanks to everybody on that, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation, those of you who watched this. Have a good night.